Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Investment Club PCS. I'm your host, Kane Webb, joined as always by my co-host, Stephanie. Stephanie, how you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I got a haircut, so I'm excited about that. So I immediately covered it up with my little Dutch hat. Uh, we have an interesting one. Now, some people are going to be there's going to be like two different reactions to what's about to happen today. People like myself who did not even know this was a thing and rightfully probably should have, but just somehow missed the bus on this one. And then the people who are like, yeah, duh, you didn't know. So today, our guest is actually not from PCS, but from a place called Logan River Academy, which I'm just going to let him sort of explain it. His name is Max Rosenberg. And apparently, they're basically the same thing. So, Max, why don't you sort of take us away and yeah, you amaze us with your knowledge here, my friend. Tell us what happened.
Hey guys, I'm Max. So as Kane stated, Logan River Academy is quite similar to Provo Canyon School. It was actually started by a lot of the staff members who worked at Provo Canyon, including Robert Christ, who was the medical director at Logan River. I think he was one of the founders at Provo Canyon School.
Yes, I saw
And
him. That was my psychiatrist. Oh my God.
he was mine too at Logan River. And then also the CEO was a guy named, or not he may have been the CEO at Logan River, but he was the CEO at one point at Provo his name was Jeff Smith. And then the other founder also worked at Provo Canyon. His name was Larry Carter. I think these people were they're no longer involved at Logan River, but they're the ones who really started the entire thing and created the whole program and the level system. They also use the exact same punishment system. Like we had class 1 through class 5. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. Class 1 was basically just minor violations, and then class 2 would be swearing or something like that. Class 3 and 4 were usually more serious offenses, and then class 5 was exclusively run violation, like if you attempted to run, or if you had plans to run, usually. But
Stephanie
we also
didn't spend
had
much time in investment or development, so you're speaking to an audience of one on this podcast with these infractions. She was a good girl.
No, I wasn't. I got class 3s for shaking my butt.
Oh man. Yeah. And our system of punishment was very similar too, but instead of investment, it was called development. And how that would work is we would be sent to a room filled with a bunch of desks, and we were forced to sit up straight, in structure like this. And we had to either read or do busy work all day to work off our points. I think you guys called it IP or IPS at PVC or PCS, but at LRA it was just called points. And
Yeah,
how it would work is you would you had certain blocks. I think they were about 28 minutes in length. You had to sit silently for 28 minutes. And if you did that, you'd work off 2 points. And you were stuck up there until you worked all your points off. And then we also had solitary confinement rooms up there. It was called.
Did you guys have to write contracts to get out too? Did you guys have to do the whole I care thing and write a contract to your counselor after you'd committed to class 3 to get brought back on unit, or had they dispensed with that?
I think that they did do something similar, but it was only for serious things. Like if you got caught with like, I don't know, if you got caught like hugging a girl, or like if you got caught with contraband, or got caught with like drug use ideation, they'd make you write something.
So what years like were you there?
2006 and 2007, but I got there in November. So I was barely there in 2006. And then I got out like the beginning of July 2007.
And you said you went to other programs too, or was that your first
No, that was my
program?
third, or actually Logan River was my fourth program. But the other programs I went to, one was called Wadiko, which it was like a summer camp type thing. And then I went to this like Sea-Doo type, just it's hard to explain, but it was like a Sea-Doo style program called Gateway Academy in Draper, Utah. And then I got kicked out of that place because I refused to follow their rules. And I got gooned over to Second Nature Duchesne, which is a wilderness program. And from there, I got sent to Logan River. And at Second Nature, they actually were threatening to send me to Provo Canyon the whole time. Like that was something they used on the kids to try to like, I don't know, coerce them to do what they wanted them to do.
Yeah,
But
I think if I knew what Provo Canyon School was before I went, I may have taken that threat more seriously.
yeah, I mean, they told horror stories about Provo. They were basically saying like kids get abused there every day, and like you won't be listened to by anybody.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's not untrue. It's not untrue. So yesterday, you and I, when we sort of connected to set this up, we were talking about somebody that like it's curious how many staff of one place worked at the other. Like I mentioned Ron Wood, and immediately you knew exactly who I was talking about. How do you offhand happen to remember some of the counselors who went there, or do you know of any who like said, "Yeah, I worked at PCS," and happen to remember their names? Like I'm genuinely curious what sort of crossover there was.
Well, Logan River Academy was located in this college town, and there was a lot of staff turnover. So like people would work there maybe like 3, 4 months and then they'd quit because they, got burned out or whatever. But there were a couple people I think who were involved with Provo, like Ron Wood, for example. I think he was like a Tavasi staff member, which is when you get like to the top 2 levels, you go into this thing called Tavasi where you get extra privileges. And I think his son also worked there. I'm trying to think who else may have worked at Provo though. I think there were a few counselors who came from like therapists who came and then they quit and went elsewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm sure like if I mention names too, like you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." So like how then did the was the school system pretty much the same way? Like you had your classes shuttled from like teacher to teacher in a secure building. Like did you guys get any like cool classes? Because I will say this, man. I think a lot of people who are there have a complicated relationship with the place. It's a very at their core, they hate everything about it, what it stands for, and a lot of the people involved. But I will say this and defend this following statement until the day I die. You cannot be in a facility like that for that long without making at least one or two genuine connections along the way. Just the sheer number of people who are there and the fact that some of them are going to be really, really decent to you in places like that, that's everything to a kid. It's like that one, like super, super, like decent counselor. And for me, a lot of those counselors were the teachers. And like probably the only reason I went to college instead of becoming some worthless bum is because I was able to make a connection in my head while I was in Provo that opened, like I'd always been really smart, but I could never put pen to paper, you know, like that was my problem. And then I figured it out when I was in there. And that was like a very life-changing skill for me and still is to this day, something that I value. And I still remember the moment like that it happened as I was sitting in short term, bummed because I really didn't have anything to do. So I asked my buddy if I could borrow his Saxon Algebra 2 book. You know, those like books that we got for the math classes. And I'd sit there and I was trying to figure out trigonometry just by following the examples. And I don't know what happened, but I did it. And then I did it again. And then I did it again. And like that sort of led to a transformation. Were there any unique or cool opportunities for you in the classes or anything about the structure, like an activity that you may not have done otherwise that you actually found and connected with? Like, did you find something of yourself when you were in there? No thanks to anyone there, but likely due to just being left to our own devices.
Yeah, I would say the art teacher there was really good, and she actually taught me a lot of things about art. Like
What was her
she
name?
taught me, I I think it was Mrs. Williams. I can't remember. It's been a while, but
We had Mrs. Lindsay, I think was her name, and she was very interesting art teacher, but she loved art. Enya all the time, Enya. But yeah, so your art teacher, Mrs. Williams, will go with what happened there?
she just I don't know, she had good art assignments, and she like the assignments that she gave out really kind of helped me grow artistically, and it kind of taught me how to use art or other things like poetry as an outlet for any like emotional struggles I have.
Steph, did you have anything you want to ask?
Well, no, I agree. I had my art teacher was my favorite too. I think her name was it's weird. I think it was Miss Lindsay or Cheryl or something like that. But it was all about like
Cheryl Lindsay,
yeah,
Enya, all the time. Yes.
yeah. Um, and I just remember like I just remember that being my favorite class, and I was obsessed with like pottery. I still have like some of the things that I made. Um, and I made this like teapot thing I was so stoked about, but it blew up in the kiln right before I left. And but yeah, no, she was amazing. I think that the teachers were probably the best part. School was the best part. It got you off the unit, and like it was like a sense of normalcy in a really not normal situation. Um, but yeah, I'm a little curious about your other experiences, Max, like in the program. You were there probably what, about a year. Like what were some of the, I don't know, what are just some of the big memories that like stand out to you that can't let go?
Well, at my previous programs, I really did not follow their structure. Like at Gateway Academy, they had a rule where you couldn't talk to anybody but the staff or like the higher level people, like your first 2 weeks or whatever, or until you got out of the first level. And I just never followed that. I would talk to anybody. I would do whatever I felt like. And eventually they kicked me out of that place. And I had the kind of same pattern of behavior throughout wilderness. And then I got to Logan River. And the first thing that happened when I got there was they strip searched me, and then they threw me in sweats and told me I was going to be on suicide precaution because there was something that happened at wilderness maybe like a month before that I guess was a risk to them. So they had to put me on suicide precaution. And when you're on that, you have to sit up in Devo until they're comfortable with sending you to your unit. And while I was up there, I saw this kid who had just run away and he got brought back in. Um, I saw him on the first day literally get picked up by one of the staff members, thrown into the wall so hard that the whole Devo shook, and then they restrained him for like, I don't know, probably like 40 minutes. And that was like my first experience there. So immediately I was like, I need to, not let that happen to me. So I started to follow their rule set because I just didn't want to have to go through any of that.
Yeah. So I had the same experience. It was just like an instant moment of like, oh shit, I'm afraid. I don't want that to happen to me. So I'm going to do whatever I have to do and say whatever I have to say to make sure that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big
Yeah.
mind. It's a big mind fuck later in life when you realize like the manipulation and like I don't know, it's just
I was just thinking about his program where he said, you can't talk to anybody, but like, do you know how debilitating, like, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but rhetorically, like, do these people know how debilitating that is to a child in their most formative years to say, you can't actually talk, you can't say this, you can't, you have to talk to these people and only these people, stay quiet. Like that's pure torture to some kids, like having to hold that in at that age, like not even be able to talk. Like that just sucks, man. And it's just like they say that this stuff is for the benefit of the child, but I've never been able to figure out like to what end. Like, the military has a goal of breaking you down and building you up. These people had a goal of just breaking you down.
I agree.
Like say what you will about, and even then, even the military has gone away from shark attacks and things of that nature because they realized that those shark attacks weren't actually churning out anything positive. Other drill sergeants would become just as furious down the line. And the new tactics that they have when people arrive to boot are like way more engaging, encouraging. And lo and behold, the proficiency of the American military is shot through the roof. It's almost like working with people instead of screaming at them has positive effects. Like, so you get brought in, you see that. How does your first month go? Like, when do you find out? Like, you find out like when is the entire program spit to you and said, "Here's how it works, bud."
Um, I think the day I got off of suicide precaution, one of the staff members brought me into like the foyer of the school building by myself, like just me and him. And he told me like everything that goes on there. And he told me like, this is what it's going to be. You have to follow these rules. If you don't, you're going to end up back in that room in Devo. And you just have to continue to work on yourself and progress in order to get home. So I would say that was the moment it was kind of like put into perspective for me what was going to come. Um, but that first month was really rough because during that, like, I got introduced to check-in, which is basically like once a week, they'd sit the whole unit down, and it was like the time where kids could air out their feelings towards other kids. And I remember one of my first check-ins, I was just getting attacked left and right because when I had done my inventory, which is like, you get a checklist of items that you need, like it's basically toiletries, towels, things of that nature. I had checked everything off, and when I got my stuff, they gave me just conditioner, no shampoo. And some kid noticed that and decided to make it known that I was like some sort of dirty person because I only had conditioner. And like 2 weeks in, I was already getting attacked by everybody in my unit over that, which I felt was completely unfair because I had actually been telling the staff members for weeks or for like a week and a half that I needed shampoo, and like nothing was done about it.
was there a moment where you just kind of realized, like, nobody here is like for real, like they're not serious, they're here to gaslight me and to blow smoke, like, and if so, like, what do you sort of remember that moment, like when you just like completely gave up and just decided, like, you know what, like, because it's one thing to say, like, you see what happens to people and you decide, like, I'm going to follow the rules. But it's an entirely different thing when you realize that even following the rules doesn't matter if a certain counselor doesn't like you for whatever reason and is having a bad day. It just doesn't matter. If they want to stall your progress there for any reason, they will. Like, did you ever have a moment like that? Or were you one of the lucky who managed to avoid that?
Well, I wouldn't say like in that way that that happened to me, but when it came to progressing through the levels, like they would just make things up to hold you back all the time. Like I never got past, I think, level 5. And it took like 7 months to get there.
We should change our
Um,
name to the Advanced Unit Club.
Right?
yeah, I mean, level 5, I think, is like the same thing as advanced unit, pretty much. But
It's
yeah, I
like
never
just
got
enough.
past level 5.
Did you
And
guys
I
have
feel like it,
did you guys have a week system for afterwards? Like first week level 6, second week level 6, after you got past a certain level, or did they just move you up? Like, I'm genuinely curious because when we got past advanced unit, it was first week achievement, second week achievement, all the way up through like advanced senior. There was always a first week process.
I can't really remember if that was the case, but I do remember how it worked. Like they would score you based on how you interacted with other kids or the staff or just basically whatever they wanted to put down as your score. And then you'd like accumulate points. I don't really know how the point system worked, but that's how you moved up in the levels was by you know, reaching a certain amount of points. Um, I don't remember though if there was like a first week, second week type thing. It was more so like every week they gave you an evaluation based on how they felt you were, like how you behaved.
That's what was so frustrating is it's like a matter of perspective of like who is watching you. And like it
Yeah,
creates this feeling of like you're being watched all the time. And if you make one little move that someone else interprets as a bad behavior or they don't like it, like you're literally getting all your stuff taken away and all of your everything you've worked for.
yeah, and they would make up things like you seem uninterested or like you have a bad attitude. And I didn't really think I had like a bad attitude. I think I was just more so frustrated by the fact that I was kind of sent somewhere against my will, you know, and not able to like progress in the way that a normal kid should be able to progress. Like I was forced into this really regulated system, and it's just after a while, it's just frustrating to be in that environment. Like
Yeah,
that's
and like you can't even wake up and like have a bad day. Like
no, you
it
have to be fake all the time.
yep.
And sometimes, like a lot of kids there were also like very mean to each other. So like and they would make fun of kids if they didn't do certain things before they got there. So some kids would like make stuff up just to fit in with the group. And even I was guilty of that at some points, like all these kids were in there for using drugs and stuff. I smoked weed maybe one time before I got there. So I would
Stephanie, do
tell
you
kids
want to
like I was a
connect with him
stoner.
on this one?
I would tell them like, yeah, I was a stoner. I smoked weed all the time, but really I'd done it like 2 or 3 times maximum
Oh,
before I got there.
I found my inventory that I wrote and I created this whole story that I was a hardcore drug addict. Like, oh, I do heroin 2 times a day and was passing out in school, none of which what and none of that ever happened. Like I went full blown. Like, yep, I'm a badass drug
Yeah,
addict.
a lot of this, actually started when I was at Wilderness because they also had a system where on the first level you couldn't talk to anybody and you were completely isolated. And to get into the group, you had to write like a life story and admit all of your wrongdoings and like all the traumatic things that went on in your life before you got there. And they just kept like denying every single one that I wrote until I wrote in that I smoked weed and did all this stuff. And then they're like, okay, this is good. You can tell this to the group, which is how that program worked. Like you had to tell your story to the whole group, and then you had to read a letter from your parents to the whole group. And that's how like you introduce yourself to them. But from that moment on, I just like kind of went with it in Logan River Academy and just everywhere else I was at.
Yeah, I have the exact same experience. I actually found my first like my letter to my parents that was 100% true. And then after the many denials and rewrites and things that they pushed me saying I was minimizing and whatever, like until it became this exaggerated, untrue story and it was approved, I like stuck with that story the rest of my life and like believed my whole life that I was a drug addict when I
I,
never
that's
was.
scary. That's scary, the amount of manipulation and brainwashing they're able to like perpetrate on children. It's
And the
really
other thing that's really interesting to me is like even if because there are actual drug addicts and people with problems, but to push somebody to share that with complete strangers who are children who are then going to use some of that information to maybe bully you or I mean that is just so I don't see how that is therapeutic or helpful in any situation. Like that is not a safe and I don't know, it's just crazy. It's all crazy.
it's gaslighting. It's creating a false sense of reality. It's just not they're not necessarily the ones doing the gaslighting. They're making you do it to yourself, which
Yeah.
is even crazier, honestly.
And it's profound how much they want you to lie to yourself too, to accomplish that. Like it's truly profound. I probably did more damage to myself in there by creating neuroses I didn't have that now affect me to this day. Like I'm a shell of the child I was, man. Like in that place, I'm also a lot different, and there's things about my new self that I like, but there's also things about my old self that I really miss, man. And I know that I'll never get them back. And it's just like, well, I can identify when and where that went away.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I remember I was a goofball before I went in. Like I would just do like ridiculous things. I guess, and your average like 14-year-old with ADD. But when I got out of there, I kind of felt like everyone was just judging me all the time. And my whole personality changed because of that, because I always thought like other people were judging me and thought like very negative things about me. And I think that was based on like the things that they would tell me about myself that weren't necessarily true. And also just the fact that other kids were really mean in there and they did like do a lot of bullying. Like kids
got
were
bullied
there was a lot of
relentlessly.
and I'm half Jewish and there was a lot of like anti-Semitism towards me. The kids would call me Jew can Sam and shit. And it just made me feel like, people hated me for no reason. And the messed up thing about all that too is like they would do this in front of the staff and the staff would just sit there silent. They wouldn't say anything. In fact, like some of them were like laughing.
The only
And
time I ever saw the staff react to any sort of religious trash talking was when we were headed out on an advanced unit activity and somebody told like a joke, like a Mormon joke. Like I think they was like, have you heard about the Mormon action figure? You put a ring on its fingers and its hip expand. And like because they made fun of Mormons, that counselor went irate. But like right prior to that, that same counselor was engaging in, like you said, Jew jokes, Christian jokes, Muslim jokes, but it's like the minute somebody made fun of Mormonism, it wasn't okay. And it was like, wait a minute here. Like, you were the one that started this. How did he get gaslit?
Yeah, no, that was common. I mean, most of the staff at Logan River Academy were Mormon too. And
Yeah.
part of the program was also like, we are not religiously affiliated, but then in every single room you would find a Book of Mormon. So yeah, you may not be officially affiliated, but we know deep down inside you're trying to push something on us.
Most of the counselors there had gone on missions. Like my unit
Yeah.
counselor, Eric, he had gone to Korea. In fact, one of the teachers who taught history, his name was Wayne Bishop. He also taught physics as well, but he did his missionary work in Korea. And they used to, like, whenever we had study group in like Mr. Bishop's room, because Eric had the key to it, he would always leave a note for Mr. Bishop in Korean, and like they would, like it was just like almost everyone that I can think of outside of a select few were either heavily Mormon, had gone on their mission, or were about to go on their mission. It was definitely impressed upon us when we were in there. Maybe not by the program, because I would agree that the program itself isn't, but the program was founded by people who are, and they've made it clear that they're okay with that happening. So the staff have no problem doing it. So the program may be, non-religious or whatever you want to call it, but the reality certainly isn't.
Yeah, no, it's there's definitely an issue with that in a lot of these programs, but so many of them are in Utah though and owned by LDS individuals. So it
I
is
would be
really
further curious to see how much of it is actually connected to the Church of LDS too, in weird ways.
Ooh, I like this. We're getting conspiracy like. I like it.
No, I'm being serious here
But
though,
it's
because
true.
when you
Yeah.
have big business in Utah,
Yep.
whether it's through mutual funds or investment projects or foundations, these companies often intermingle somehow, some way to support each other. And I would be curious to see what happened if people followed the money on this, because I I imagine getting the records to the Church of LDS would be pretty damn impossible outside of what they already put out.
Are you coming up with the next Netflix documentary? We'll call it The Church.
Maybe.
We'll go infiltrate the church.
They'd honestly have to hire somebody who's not a stoner to actually investigate this, though, because I'm like, look, I can come up with good ideas, but I am way too high to go and do that much work, man. Like,
yeah. Another thing, that one guy who ran the whole WASP, you watched the program, right?
I
Yeah.
actually haven't brought myself around to watching it yet for a couple of reasons, but I'm well aware of what it entails and the work therein being done, which I understand you're a part of.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I'm not a part of what Katie Kubler was doing. I just do like a little bit of activism to spread awareness to situations where programs have gotten completely out of control. Like right now, I'm working on something with Trails Carolina because they have now overseen the deaths of 2 kids and somehow they just keep operating, which doesn't make sense to me. But I guess somehow they convinced
We need to protect our
the
kids.
DHHS.
Unless they're dying in a residential treatment center, then nope. Oh well.
But there are a lot of cases out there that have happened even recently that I've kind of helped to bring attention to.
And that's why we're doing this, is because we want people to share their stories of situations and events and things that have happened to them. So that way, like, my personal goal is to stop a single parent from sending their kid. If they come to this channel and watch these interviews and go, whoa, like, I clearly need to sit down and reconnect with my child if I think that if this is what I'm thinking, things have obviously gotten so impossibly distant between us, and sending my child here is almost guaranteed to I would be curious to see the total number of people who have either a diminished relationship, no relationship, or a negative relationship with their parents post stays
I've
in these institutions. Are you comfortable with talking about that with yourself?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've talked to quite a few people who've been to programs all over the country and even outside of the country. And I would say a good 70% of them, maybe less, but around that number who I've talked to have had very strained or even non-existent relationships with their families post program. So
I let my
it's a
grandma die
pretty
without talking to her again. She left me in a facility to rot. I left her, like, I didn't put her in there. Her drug use put her in the old folks home she was in. She kept taking her meds too often, forgetting taking them again. So her doctors put her in those places. But yeah, like, I stopped talking to my grandma. Like, I was just like, you know what? Once I did some internal thinking, I realized I owe this woman nothing. And I stopped talking to my mom too, because I realized you were just as much a part of it as she was, and have continued to take advantage of me and just manipulate and gaslight me my entire life. The last time I cut my mom off was when my grandma was paying my cell phone bill at the time when I was in grad school or an undergrad, so long as I finished college. And I was in grad school and I was almost done. But my mom felt it was time for me to learn responsibility. And never mind that, I'm married, have been with the same woman like forever now, but like it was time for me to learn responsibility. And so she had my grandma stop paying the line and give it to her so that they could teach me a lesson. And they did this all behind my back and without discussing it with me, and just brought it on me and started like both teaming up on me. And I was like, you know what? I will never talk to either of you ever again. Like I'm done. And I didn't. My mom ended up having a stroke in 2020, and I did talk to her right before she died, but she wasn't there. Like, she was on life support at that time. I like just being held alive by a ventilator. So she didn't hear, but I told her what I had to say and said, good luck, you got the life you wanted. And that was it, like it is what it is.
That's rough though, because I couldn't imagine like having no relationship with my family. Like, luckily, I do still
I'm
have a
glad, dude.
relationship
I
with my
wouldn't wish it
family.
on anybody. Like, if people can have their parents, like, I don't want anyone to think the goal of that point was like, yeah, screw your parents. No, man. If you can get love, take love. Parents make mistakes, and
Yeah,
there's no pamphlet for raising a child. Sometimes parents are pushed to the max, and sometimes kids push parents to the max. These places should still never be an option, but I would never want anybody to just abandon. Like, I had multiple other instances post Provo that warranted me doing what I did. Like, but for other people, like, I'm glad. So how did it, was it rough in the beginning? Like, or was it immediate talking after you got out? Like, do you want to talk us a little bit through how that worked?
it was definitely rough, because at the time I felt like my family abandoned me. I couldn't really like comprehend that maybe they thought they were doing what was right for me at the time, because I was a little out of control with my mom. Me and her would fight a lot, and there were times where like I would pick up things and throw them, or like I broke a chair one time, and I was a little out of control in my home, or at least in my home life. But when I first got out, I was like, "Yeah, screw you guys. You abandoned me. You threw me in this facility and had no idea what I was going through." And I assumed they didn't care, but that obviously wasn't the case. I think they just didn't understand. They're a little hoodwinked by the educational consultant, because the educational consultant made these programs out to be something they weren't, like that they were actually helpful, when for the most part they weren't. For the most part, it was a lot of just torment and just a lot of, I don't know, just manipulation and gaslighting.
I know you're Jewish, so pardon the expression, but like, was there a come to Jesus moment for like, for you and your family? Was there like a really intense sit down discussion where you guys decided, you know what, let's put this on the table, talk about how I felt. They talked about, you know, hey, we got lied to by these people, and you realize like your parents got lied to by the program, you got lied to by the program. You guys can either hate each other or you guys can forgive each other and work towards a better relationship? Or was it gradually, little by little, over time?
I would say it was gradually over time, because we never really sat down and had one of those conversations. I just tried to put myself in their shoes and understand the way that they felt about the situation. And I came to the realization that, I was kind of bad and kind of hard to control. And my dad worked a lot and my mom had her own issues. And um, for that situation, it was kind of overwhelming to them. So I just kind of came to that realization and started to sort of give them the benefit of the doubt. There are times where I still don't trust like certain things that they try to tell me, but um, you know, it's more so just based out of caution on based out of like caution from the things that I've already been through.
Sure.
But um, our relationship isn't terrible or anything. It's just kind of is what it is. I don't know. We kind
I
of just
I go ahead.
gotten past it.
Yeah, I relate a lot to what you're saying. That's exactly what happened with me and my parents. It's not the greatest, it's not the best, but it's kind of sad that, it falls on us to kind of be the adults and have to be the one having like empathy and putting ourselves in our parents' shoes, when I think as a kid you want kind of the reverse, Um, but it is what it is. And I appreciate that, you're doing a little bit of activism as far as shedding light on the actual programs, because it is true that not all parents were just, trying to send their kids away because they didn't want them. Like they really thought these places were going to help them. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the things that you're actually doing? Like, do you have a website? Like, I don't know if we can add that to like this episode description. Like,
Yeah, I told him anything he gives us or anything he wants to draw attention to, even if it's his own work or his own art, we're happy to put all that stuff down here in the description for him. So there'll be links to everything in the description. Go ahead, Max.
Well, right now, I recently created a petition to keep Trails Carolina closed forever. Um, it's actually, I created this on April 15th. It's already gotten 1,065 signatures. Um, I just wanted to create it for people to have a voice on the matter, because it's kind of crazy how like one government agency gets to decide whether they stay open or get closed down. So I wanted to give people a place to put their comments on the whole situation. And I've received actually a lot of comments, including comments from parents whose children were there, and one mother whose son actually died there commented. And I always keep her in my heart, because she lost her son, and it's just a lot for her. And the fact that she came out and actually commented made me realize like these parents they don't want anything bad to happen to their kid, obviously. Um, and it's just sad when I hear from parents whose children didn't make it. Um, but I'm also, another thing I do is I am part of a community of people who are survivors of these programs, and I do actually try to like be a guide or like a big brother for some of these people who are fresh out of the programs, because they are really, there's a lot of things that they're struggling with, especially when it comes to their relationships with their families. And I try to, be there for them whenever they have any questions or just need help with something. Um, but yeah, this situation at Trails is pretty serious. And I will give you guys a link to it so you can post it in the description.
Please do.
I wonder, can I do this? Is there a way to, yeah, share, I think. Oh no, it's only host that can share. I was gonna say, I have actually the petition right here, and there's some interesting stuff in the petition. My friend sent me this government accountability office hearing, and in the hearing they are listing like all these terrible abuses that have happened in the troubled teen industry, and then they actually conclude that the industry tortures children in this hearing. I thought that that was pretty interesting. Um, there are also some stories about like programs basically manipulating families to the point where like people get divorced and like the family is completely destroyed.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it's like the therapist in this one instance actually encouraged the mother of the child to divorce her husband, and then it did happen. Like just crazy stories like that. Um, I also just try to research and keep up with things in case like I do find a situation that needs to be like spotlighted, because
Is there a
those
place
situations
like,
do happen quite a bit.
is there
Like
a place
also
where people can go to like follow you, like so that like you know what I'm saying? Like if
well, right
like
now I'm
Facebook
focusing
or
on, sorry. Right now I'm focusing on this Trails Carolina thing. So I do have a Facebook page for that. And I also have a Twitter account. The Facebook page is called I believe it's called Keep Trails Carolina Closed. And then the Twitter account is called Shut Down Trails Carolina. I don't know why I didn't name them both the same thing, but it's ended up that way. Um, but on Keep Trails Carolina Closed, there's like tons of testimonies, news stories, and just like details on the case and on other instances of abuse. Like they've covered up sexual assaults. They've and some of the ways they've handled these sexual assaults are just disgusting. Like they'll just, a girl will get sexually assaulted and then they'll just throw her right back with her abuser. Like it's just messed up things.
And it's
Um,
true, like right now, that there's really no like legislature like
no,
on these programs
there
or
is there is some legislature. Some, what's her name? Paris Hilton, who was, I think Kane said she was at
she
Provo
was at
Canyon.
PCS when I was there. Like I
Yeah,
actually talked to her at a talk time. Like we this wasn't like one of those I know somebody who knows somebody. No, I talked to her when we were both there.
yeah, and she's doing a lot of work. She's actually
Yes.
advocating for legislation, and she's gone under oath at hearings and stuff to give her story about being at Provo Canyon, and it's actually made a pretty big impact with some of these legislatures. or legislators, whatever, however
Yeah,
you say
I
it.
just wasn't sure if anything ever came up from that. I remember like hearing about it, but I never really saw like if they
Something
did
passed,
anything.
something passed last year or 2 years ago in Utah, and now they have to record all their PIs, their physical interventions, and they have to like write a description about what happened and submit it to the Department of Human Services or Health and Human Services.
I can't believe
Um,
that wasn't even a thing already. Like
yeah,
state
I don't know why.
reporting. Like you do that in any facility, hospital, nursing home, like to not have state reporting on incidents, that's insane.
Well, it finally happened like in 2021,
Oh my
30
God.
years late. Yeah,
Oh,
it's insane.
I want to
Um,
be surprised by this stuff, but then I always remember that laws like you can only walk your duck on Sunday if it's accompanied by your water buffalo are also still on the dockets. And then I'm like, yeah, considering how low women rank in white males, like general white male politicians, like pyramid of needs as it is, you can imagine that these laws weren't unnecessarily addressed. But yeah, dude, like it's beyond disgusting that you don't even have to report. Like what did like we my goodness, man. The amount of avenues that we as survivors had to report or talk about anything is a straight line to hell.
yeah, I actually heard recently from a Logan River Academy survivor who was there maybe like 2 years ago. He was sexually assaulted. And when he told the staff, he like swore or something. He said like this dude shoved my face in whatever and said the F bomb. And their response was, don't swear. And then he took it to the therapist, and the therapist said, don't report this to the authorities. This is a joke. Like, just
oh my
crazy
God.
thing. Yeah. Which obviously you
Should
guys are
lose
just
their
trying to cover
license.
something up. Or at least from my perspective, that's what I'm seeing.
You should
Yeah,
lose
I'm
your
really
license.
curious like how it comes down like right wise. Like I don't ever remember like being told that I still had rights like as a person. Like I know
No.
when you like are in a nursing home,
Yeah,
like
when you
even
get
the
to
elderly,
jail, they give you a list of your
right? Like you
rights, you
have
know?
rights. You have the
Yeah.
right to like an abundance or like whatever. Like we had nothing, like absolutely nothing.
No, I mean, unfortunately, that's how it is in America. With if you're under 18, you kind of whoever your guardian or custodian is, you're kind of subject to their rules. And our parents signed our rights over to these places, so they became our guardians. It's messed
So
up.
before we get out of here, I did want to ask, man, did you have a friend or anybody that you made a connection with in there, like, as like, I know we talked about the art teacher, but like, did you have somebody that you connected with and that you still talk to today from the academy, like a best friend, or have you pretty much gone
Mm,
into just talking to other survivors, but you didn't really want to talk to anybody you were there with?
No, I've kept in touch with a few people. It's been a few years since I've heard from anybody, but I'm still friends with a bunch of people on Facebook. Um, I have like talked on the phone to a couple of them. The thing is, like, we're all spread out across the country, so we can't like meet up, or if we can, it's like very rare. There
Or
actually was, I went to a boarding school after I went to Logan River Academy, and there was a kid there whose brother went to Logan River Academy. So I did see him after the program because he used to come and visit his brother. But yeah, it's like very, unless you're from California, which a lot of the kids are from California, it's unlikely that you're gonna get many opportunities to see the kids you were in there with again.
yeah, I think I saw, it was funny because the place I got sent to after I got out of Provo actually had like 5 people from Provo who were in different parts of the program, including one who just went to the school, but like still lived at home with his parents and whatnot. Like it was pretty wild. So, but I think I probably about like 5 or 7 people from Provo that I met up with on the outs after
On
I
the
got
out.
out. Yeah. I remember sitting there thinking like how many times we used to gaslight ourselves when we were sitting in there. Oh yeah, dude, I'll totally come to Pittsburgh and visit you. No, you won't. Like, no,
I
you
actually
won't.
did. I actually flew to see my best friend in the program. She lives in California. I went and seen her a couple times.
Okay.
That's awesome.
All right. So some people do, and I
But
can't
I
say
had
it
free
didn't hold
flight
true.
benefits then.
What's up?
My brother was a flight attendant, so I got to fly for free then. That was why.
Oh, you had
So
the hookup.
Yeah.
my buddy, I went to his graduation at Provo when he graduated from high school, and he lived in Reno, Nevada. So he knew when my graduation was, and he drove up from Reno, Nevada, and I left with him when I discharged, and we went back to California together. So even I can't say that I didn't have somebody from out of state come visit me. So it
Yeah,
was pretty cool.
that is cool. That just reminded me though, when I discharged from Logan River Academy, actually, the transporter who was a staff member at Logan River Academy, like halfway on the drive home, he stopped at a gas station and pulled a beer and a cigarette out and handed them to me. And he was like, "Here is your first taste of freedom." And I'm like thinking, wow, you guys just spent 7, 8 months demonizing this stuff to me, and now you're gonna hand it to me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I thought
If
that
only
was
people knew how
crazy.
frequent that was in these communities. If only people knew how often staff members would give you a beer and a cigarette in certain programs.
Well, they'll know
It's
now.
yeah. Well, it happened to me once, like when I was leaving. Probably
Happened to
he
me.
probably chose that time because I couldn't snitch on him after that, you know.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
But
well,
it was pretty crazy.
so Max, do you have any last word, anything that you want to mention before we get out of here? It's been a
Um,
genuine pleasure hearing your story, and I hope that now this opens up an audience for people who were in these PCS adjacent programs, because I feel silly for not knowing it, but now I'm glad I do.
uh, I don't think there's much. I mean, there's like I could talk for days about things, but I feel like you guys got the gist of it. The only thing I would say is to go check out that one petition I was talking about because um, I
Yeah,
I
please.
just want people to like have their voices heard on that matter,
And
and also
solidarity, if nothing else.
solidarity for the families who've lost people and for the children who are no longer here to speak with us. Um, and also just it's a good place to make your voice heard and to because media and people within the government have looked at this petition, so it's just good to make your voice heard because on the off chance they are looking at it, just gives them a different perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I'm sorry we dredged up some bad memories, but I'm also really thankful that you reached out. We connected on the Reddit thread, and I'm going to post this. This will be going up on Wednesday. And I'm gonna Max, just email me everything, including a link to the petition, and I'm gonna put it in there. I'll make it bold and noticeable for people to go and sign that. And I'll definitely add on a trigger warning for people to regarding the essay topics towards the end. Not a
Yeah.
problem. That's what we're here to discuss. We just need to put those warnings on there for people who may or may not be expecting it. So thank you so much for sharing your story and being so open and honest, Max. Like it was, Stephanie, you got
Yes,
anything you want to
thank
say?
you. No, I'm very,
Thank you
thank you so
guys. I'm
much.
glad you got, I'm sorry. I was just saying thank you. I'm glad you guys are out here to help people tell their stories and, give exposure to what is actually happening at Provo Canyon and other schools like it, because people deserve to have their voices heard on this.
I absolutely agree. So, well, we will be back in about 2 weeks. Steph, just get at me with the next developments, and we'll find out who our next guest is next week. Max, it has been a pleasure. Steph, thanks for taking time out of your day.
Yeah.
And for you guys in there, don't forget to like, subscribe. Please leave a comment. If you guys have people you want to connect us with, or you want to reach out to us privately, we have an email that you can always use and reach out to us if it's something that you want to keep on the DL. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time.